As a Maryland guy, everyone assumes I'm biased. However, I really think Derik Queen has the tools to be a legend in his hometown. This is Locked On Wizards.
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
DC family, this is Locked On Wizards, where you're part of our family. We thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen every single day. Part of the Locked On Network, it's your team every day. Alongside DC Sports content creating savant and credentialed media member for the Washington Wizards, Abdullah Ayubi, I'm Ben Strober, and I cover all things DC Sports for 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. Let's get right into it. You can hear it in the cold open with my elation for the idea of Derik Queen in a Wizards uniform, the kid out of Baltimore. I'm from Baltimore. That's why. The words that we will remember for a long time from the NCAA tournament after his game winner over Colorado State, leading Maryland to the Sweet 16. I think he has all the tools to be an excellent player at the next level. And despite these naysayers that say that he is undersized for his position, that he won't fit in well with Washington to pair alongside Alex Sarr, and that there are struggles that we'll see from him defensively or rebounding, I'm here to put those accusations to bed today, because this is a guy that was one rebound away from averaging a double-double at Maryland. And in his first ever game, albeit against Manhattan, I called that game, and he had a 20-20 performance in his first ever game in college. And he just continued to get better and better as the season went on. He went against really stiff competition in the Big Ten, won the Freshman of the Year award despite being in the conference with Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey. And I think that says so much about who he is as a player and how much he meant to Maryland. I think he can play in a similar role and really change the trajectory of this Wizards franchise.
Yeah, you couldn't have said it any better with all those accolades. I think also people want to bring up the fact that he didn't perform well in the combine, but we talk about it a lot, Ben. In today's NBA, athleticism, it just really isn't the driving trait. If you're really looking at a prospect and saying, oh, he's not going to be there, be good defensively, athletically doesn't match. I mean, just look at today's NBA. Not everyone's going to be athletic, and they can still thrive. So if you're the Wizards, why not take a swing on Derik Queen at 6? I don't know, Ben. The question is, realistically, is it a good idea to take him at 6? Is it too high? I think if you're the Wizards and you get your guard at 6, hopefully in Trey Johnson, at pick 18, why don't you trade up, go back in the lottery if Derik Queen falls, which, I mean, we've seen mock drafts. We saw on Yahoo, Ben, they haven't fallen to 18, which I don't think is reasonable. This doesn't make any sense. So bring him home. I agree. Kid from Baltimore, look at Bob Carrington, also from B-More. They breed dogs out there, and bringing a guy like DQ pairing up with Alex Sarr would be a really good front court. And I brought up the fact that he reminds me of a mix of Naz Reid and Alperen Şengün. Size, a little bit of a concern, but 6'9", 6'8", he can still find his way to the rim, and the amazing footwork. We've been getting killed in the paint for so long in Washington for so many years. So bringing a guy like him who can dominate in the paint would just be awesome for Will Dawkins in this roster.
And a lot of the concern that we see is his outside shooting game, which was pretty pedestrian at best throughout the regular season for Maryland. He did turn up a little bit from the outside the arc, especially in the postseason, which is why I'm maybe under the impression a slight misnomer for his shooting ability. And I know we've talked a lot about Jeremiah Fears and the concerns that are there with his shooting ability, but a lot of the things that people have brought up to us, reasons why we shouldn't buy into the concerns with shooting for players, is because development doesn't stop at the college level. This is the NBA where, I mean, we've talked about the idea of the Wizards getting a shooting coach. Why don't you bring in a guy like Lethal Shooter or something? But I think the Wizards do have the tools to maybe develop a jump shot on a player like Derik Queen. And you bring up so many different aspects about how the game is moving away from being about athleticism. It's almost more European style at this point. And I think that's what makes him so tantalizing for the Wizards right here, because you pair him alongside Alex Sarr, who has expanded his game to play a little bit more from the outside. He's got good touch around the rim. I think there's going to be pretty good floor spacing on this team. And what Derik Queen did really well in college is when he was able to play alongside another big on the floor. Usually his best minutes came when Julian Reese was also on the floor with him to kind of be that option in the paint that, defenses would have to key in and focus on. If Sarr is that guy that can really score from anywhere on the floor, become a threat from inside and outside the perimeter, that's going to open things up for a guy like Derik Queen to get the ball around the high post, put it on the floor, take it to the basket, and either play make by kicking it to someone on the outside or just go all the way to the bucket and finish, because that's what he did best at Maryland. His footwork, his touch around the rim is magnificent, and I think it's going to translate really well to the next level. There are so many things about his game that look so polished from a young age, but he's just scratching the surface. He is so young, and there are so many things that he can get better at, and that's what the NBA is all about. Just look at some of the best players that are in the NBA right now. It took 2 to 3 years for them to really reach their full potential as players, and I think Derik Queen is a perfect prospect that would fit into this Washington young core and develop with them.
So my question is, Ben, if you're the Wizards, at what pick, and you're at 18 after getting a guard at 6, do you say, Derik Queen's falling, we have to make a move now and move up?
So what the reports are indicating right now is that New Orleans, who picked 7th under new management, they're very interested in Derik Queen from what I've read recently. And then also there's been the speculation whether Brooklyn is interested in a guy like Derik Queen if Jeremiah Fears isn't there because he goes before that. I think there's a lot of interest from Brooklyn on both those two prospects. And that's why it's so polarizing at this point, because a lot of people don't want to take Derik Queen with the 6th overall pick. And, personally, if Johnson or one of the other players that we've touched on, Ace Bailey, is there at 6, I would take one of those players over Derik Queen. But I'm really on the proponent that Washington should trade back into the lottery to get a guy like Derik Queen if they love him that much. However, if he does go at 7, then that would close the door on all those things. It's really tough to tell how NBA prospects value Derik Queen, because I think a lot of scouts have voiced certain concerns with him. But I don't really know if I buy a lot of the concerns. I mean, I don't really understand the whole aspect of rebounding being an issue for him, because I saw him go out there and get over 10 boards in plenty of games for this Maryland team. And one thing that the Wizards need to get better at is rebounding. And that's why a lot of people are against the idea of Kaman Malawach, because he only averaged 6 boards per game despite being 7'2", and Alex Sarr, another guy who only averaged around 6 boards per game last year. So you think to yourself, do you really want 2 centers in DC that struggle to get rebounds? How is that going to affect this team? And the Wizards were not a good rebounding team at all last year or the past couple of years. So I think Queen would actually kind of help you out in that department a little bit. We're going to touch on Thomas Sorber later in this video out of Georgetown, who might be one of the best rebounders in this entire draft, and how he might fit in here in DC. But I don't think Derik Queen has issues rebounding the basketball. I think really it's a motor thing, it's an effort thing, and I think Brian Keefe could get through to him in that realm.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. When it comes to DQ, do you think his development, like come year 1, we'll see those strides, or do you think it'll be like a Alex Sarr where we'll have to wait up until the second half of the season to see? Like, do you think he's just going to get better every game?
I think it's going to be a mixed bag, because at the college level, he started out really, really fast his first couple games. Yeah, you're playing weaker competition, but he was still adjusting at that point, and he was dominating. He looked like he was the next big thing. He was going to be a lottery pick. And then came the midpoint of the season as conference play began. He started to lull a little bit, had a couple of pedestrian performances, and then the voices around the Maryland programs are saying maybe he is going to be around here next year. Maybe he's not going to be a lottery pick at this point. Maybe he benefits from playing another year in school. And then the final stretch of the season, he just dominates, and he dominated his way through the NCAA tournament. He scored 27 in the Sweet 16 game against Florida, and I think at that point everyone was certain that he would not be back next year. I mean, it was pretty much certain to me in February when Maryland really started to play well down the stretch of the season that Derik Queen was going to be a lottery pick or close to it. So he would not be back at Maryland the next year. So I think we're going to see a mixed bag of that. I think he's going to show flashes early on. He might struggle a bit as well. But as the season goes on, I think that's where we will see him get better, kind of on a similar trajectory to Alex Sarr last year.
Yeah, that's what I love to see, rookies taking time and getting better every day. Because if you don't remember, I mean, you probably remember, Ben, but people were calling Alex Sarr a bust after 5 summer league games, and he's willing to give. And then second half of the season puts up 34 points against one of the greatest centers of all time in Nikola Jokic. So getting better every day is what I love to see. And we saw that, and not just Alex Sarr, but in Keyshawn George and Bub Carrington. So if you bring in DQ here in Washington, that could be an idea that I love. And at 6, maybe it might be a little too high, especially since if Trey Johnson's on the board or even Ace Bailey. We'll see what happens in this situation. I think most likely scenario, if you land Derik Queen, is you move up from 18. And I say you do it. This draft has a lot of talent, and you have the draft capital. Pull the trigger. Again, this is what makes good GMs separate from the great GMs. The great GMs make those aggressive moves, and Will Dawkins has a track record of being aggressive.
Yeah, and we've already got the leaks out that Washington is actively trying to be aggressive at this point, come the draft process. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Derik Queen would fit in Washington. Will Dawkins make a move and go and get the guy that lived 3 doors down from maybe his future point guard in Bub Carrington? We've talked about one Maryland star in D.C. Let's talk about a stud from former ACC rival Duke. Let's talk Kon Knueppel. Is he really Corey Kispert 2.0? We have that next year on Locked On Wizards. Shopping for a car should be exciting, not exhausting, but between the confusing prices, hidden fees, it can feel overwhelming. And that's why I love using CarGurus. They help you cut through the noise and show you the best deals with full confidence. With over 4 million listings, CarGurus has more in new and used cars than any other major online marketplace in the United States. They verify dealers, provide real price analysis, and give you the tools and data you need to make the right choice without second-guessing yourself. You need a deal you can trust. CarGurus makes it easy to compare vehicles side by side with unbiased ratings. I was able to do this when I got my new car. My battery died on my Honda Accord, so I was able to use CarGurus and get my new Nissan Rogue. The best feature, price drop alert, so you know exactly when the perfect car is available for whatever your budget is. Plus, the in-depth vehicle details gives you a peace of mind before stepping into any lot. Buy or sell your next car today with CarGurus at CarGurus.com. Go to CarGurus.com to make sure your deal is the best deal. That's CarGurus.com. CarGurus.com. All right, let's get into segment number 2 here on Locked On Wizards, Friday edition, the final one as we approach NBA Draft Week next week. Abdullah and I, we cannot wait to see what the Wizards do. We have heard a lot this past week about Washington. Might be really aggressive, already actively working the phones, called San Antonio about number 2, but the Spurs appear at Locked On, Dylan Harper. But we're going to talk about Kon Knueppel right here, the star of Duke that averaged 14.5 points per game, playing alongside Cooper Flagg, who will be the number 1 pick in this draft. And the comparisons that we've seen to him being Corey Kispert 2.0. And I want to put this out here because a lot of people in our last video, and I made the point that I don't really understand the Kispert 2.0 comparisons. I feel like that's an indictment of a player like Kon Knueppel. I think is one of the more talented players in this draft and maybe is a bit undervalued by a lot of people who are, trying to mock draft and trying to decide who would be the best fit for their team. Now, not to say that their play styles are extremely different than the two, because I think Corey Kispert, the way he plays from the outside, he's a guy that can score at all 3 levels. Kon Knueppel kind of the same way. I like what Knueppel can do as a playmaker. I've seen a lot of really good clips, a lot of tape from him where he's a guy that can drive to the bucket because he is a threat to take it to the rim and then pass to the outside to someone that could be an outside threat if the Wizards get somebody, or if Jordan Poole is still playing on the outside for this Wizards team. If Bub Carrington develops from the outside, that could be a guy that could change a new dynamic to your offense. So to say that they're the same player, I don't like it, because it almost feels like Wizards fans use it as an indictment on Kon Knueppel as a player. He's one of the more talented players in this entire 2025 draft class. So I think we need to put a little more respect on him, and not to say Corey Kispert is a bad player either. I think his expiration date is probably a little past due here in Washington. I think he will be getting moved at some point pretty soon. We made a video about that recently. But Corey Kispert, solid player, just doesn't really fit in this Wizards timeline. Knueppel, though, a guy that Dawkins brings in himself at this point, I think it'd be tantalizing for the Wizards, and he could do a lot of good things for him.
Yep, and I think another big reason, just want to harp on the Corey Kispert situation, it's just he's not Will Dawkins' guy. And we've seen in the past where if you're not part of this regime, you're likely 1 foot out the door. And unfortunately with Corey, I think that's the situation that's being dealt with, given that contract just wasn't really consistent with points per game. But going back to Kon Knueppel, I agree with you, Ben. I think it's ridiculous to compare him to Corey Kispert. His ability to score at will, attack the rim, playmake is something that not a lot of people are talking about outside of the shooting splits, which are great. I think also the fact that he stepped up when Cooper Flagg went down with injury, losing the number 1 pick in presumably NBA draft, and now you're put in the situation where you have to lead this team. He stepped up when the lights were the brightest and played at Duke, the elite of the elite program. So why can't he deliver in the NBA level? I think his game will translate really, really well. And I just think it's lazy to compare guys like him to Austin Reeves, Dalton Knecht, and Corey Kispert. There's really no correlation outside of skin color and probably their size. But I think Kon Knueppel's game will translate. Now, is it worth to taking him? We're taking at 6 might be a little too high, especially again if you have Trey Johnson there and somehow Ace Bailey is there. I don't think you view those guys. You can't take those guys or take Kon Knueppel over those guys. So 18 trading up. If you really love Kon Knueppel, pull the trigger and you get that wing that be offensive threat, and we need that wing that can score because Bilal Koulibaly, if he doesn't take that year 3 stride, which I think he will, but if in the case he doesn't, then you need someone to fill in and start developing and be that wing that can score 15 to 20 points per game. You already have Sadiq Bey, so you need a younger guy in that position.
There's conflicting reports about how NBA executives feel about Kon Knueppel because one report here, Knueppel says he has a virtual meeting scheduled with the 76ers this week, who are obviously picking with the 3rd overall pick. There's been a lot of smoke about whether they're really interested in Ace Bailey, but also there's a lot of noise that Philadelphia wants to trade back. So if Knueppel's a guy, then maybe you see them trading back for it. But you also see reports and a lot of scouts that have said that Knueppel is a top 5 talent in this entire draft and that he will go in the top 5. So it's really hard to kind of gauge where this is right now and how Washington would fit into the equation. And, I more wanted to bring him up as a prospect, just to touch on it a little bit, to see what he might bring to the table and maybe put some of the, accusations of people that say that he's no good and that he would be the same thing as Corey Kispert in the NBA, put those to bed a little bit, because you can't just label prospects as other NBA players. You can make certain comparisons, say maybe they have a similar play style, but to, say the trajectory of his career is already going to be a guy that will be sitting on the bench and coming in as a key 6-man or role player for a Wizards team or whatever team, I just don't really think it makes much sense. You don't know enough about these players. You haven't seen them play at the NBA level, but I think Knueppel has a lot of the tools to translate to the next level. And if he's there at some point later in the first round past the 6th pick, this all depends on what the Wizards really do. If they trade up and get in the top 3 or top 4 to get a guy like Johnson or Ace Bailey if they're really interested, I don't know if that would, put Knueppel off the table for Wizards. He'd probably go somewhere before then, and then the Wizards, moving back a little bit and try to move up from 18 to get a guy like Derik Queen, who we've touched on in this episode. I don't know where it would fit in from that standpoint, but it's just interesting to talk about.
Yep, I agree. It's a lot of scenarios that could go down, a lot of smoke screens. For all we know, one of the young guys on this Wizards roster could be traded come draft night, like we saw last year with Denny Avdia. So we really just don't know until draft night. And if you're the Wizards, I think it's a home run draft for me. If you get that guard and you somehow get a big, I think that's like ideal for me. But if you can somehow land a wing and Kon Knueppel and you don't give up that much, I think that would be great as well. Mm-hmm. It's just getting younger. That's what I love to see with this Wizards roster. You want to see the timeline. You want to see the year 2, year 3 transition for like the 3 that we had last year with Keyshawn George, Alex Sarr, Bub Carrington. I think it will all just be all right. It'll take some time, and I can't wait till summer league because again, there's just so much young guys on this team that if you're Will Dawkins or whoever handles that roster, you got to figure out who do you want to play. So it's crazy to think about that. You as a Wizards fan right now, a year ago from today, I was thinking there wasn't that much talent on this roster. Fast forward a year later, there's going to be a problem eventually down the line where we'll have too much talent. Eventually, we have to trade one of these guys.
Yeah, and the Wizards need everything right now. So that's the thing. Why you can't really go wrong position-wise in this draft for me, because I think the Wizards could use somebody at every single position on the floor. They have holes all over the place. They're not going to be drafting a certain position because they're going to say, we need somebody here at this moment. That is what we need. That's the missing piece. That's not going to be the case here for Washington. So we'll see. Well, if Derik Queen isn't there at some point in this draft, if either New Orleans or Brooklyn takes him after the Wizards go at 6, or whether the Wizards go in the top 3 or something along those lines, there's one more prospect that we do need to highlight here. Another local college product could be what Washington needs in its front court. Thomas Sorber, I hope you've gotten used to DC. There's nothing like stepping into your own outdoor space and feeling like you've escaped to a personal oasis. If you are wanting to update your patio this season, WayFair has made it so easy to turn it into a space that feels like yours, comfortable, and ready for summer. WayFair has everything you need to level up your outdoor space. Conversation sets, outdoor bars, fire pits, hot tubs, gazebos. Yes, even the perfect string lights to set the vibe. It's like giving your backyard that resort feel without the price resort tag. What do you want to do with your home this summer? I recently picked up a new outdoor dining set and some modern lounge chairs, and they completely transformed my patio. It was one of the best purchases I made really since I moved into my new place. My style Lens clean and modern. I love being able to filter and find exactly what fits my space and budget. The delivery was free, fast, and totally hassle-free, even with larger items. Now whether I'm hosting friends or just unwinding with a book, it genuinely feels like I'm at my own private retreat. Don't wait. Make your outdoor space your dream oasis today with WayFair and enjoy it all summer long. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop a huge outdoor selection. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. Welcome back to Locked On Wizards, final edition of the week. I'm your host, Ben Strober, alongside my co-host, Abdullah Ayubi. And we're going to talk some Thomas Sorber, a local college product, that is, out of Georgetown. He is initially from New Jersey, but maybe the most talented rebounder in this entire draft class. And what have we talked about many times in this video here is that the Wizards need to get better rebounding. That's for sure. He put up as many as 15 rebounds in a game against a tough Providence team last year, and the rebounding numbers are just staggering in what he was able to average at Georgetown over the past season. Averaged around 8.5 points per game, or 8.5 rebounds per game, and I think he's somebody that really could step up and fill the role of being a rebounder alongside Alex Sarr if a guy like Derik Queen isn't there.
And I think I'm looking at it right now, Ben. His wingspan listed at 7'6". That could something that could definitely help you out defensively. And again, rebounding is something that the Wizards just haven't been really good at these past couple of years. A bottom 5 in a lot of categories. And you bring in a guy like Sorber, who I think him and Sarr would be a really good tandem, and they can complement each other really well. But my question is for you, Ben, is what do you think the biggest difference is when it comes to Queen and Sorber? Do you think it's the competition that Queen played against in college, and also is for Sorber, is it more wingspan? And I think without shoes, they're both 6'9". So that was my question. I don't think Derik Queen's gonna fall to 18, but I see a world where Sorber falls to 18 for sure.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because I think the rim protection actually maybe sets Queen and Sorber apart a little bit here, because Sorber actually could prove to be a better rim protector at the next level than Derik Queen. Sorber, in his season with Georgetown, had 3 or more blocks in 10 of his games. 10 of them. And we talk so much about Kamon Malawach at 7'2" and how elite of a rim protector he could be at the next level. But I think Thomas Sorber has proven he can maybe be just as good despite not having the size and reach that Malawach does. And Sorber has the rebounding aspect to his game, more going for him at this point. So I think this is a guy that's also being undervalued at this point in the draft, Abdullah.
And for me, I don't want to say a Bam Adebayo, but maybe like a early of career Al Horford is like a comparison that I see with Sorber. And the idea of him being that defensive rim protector and pair him alongside Alex Sarr, it'll be hard to score in the paint. And that's what we want as Wizards fans. A lot of NBA, 30 teams in the NBA, 28 teams tonight, 29 teams tonight, destroy us in the paint. And that's just something you need to emphasize this upcoming year. And that's one thing that I'm hoping Coach Keefe will emphasize this offseason. Rebounding, it's hard to win games when you're getting out-rebounded and getting killed in the paint by 20, 15 points. So a guy like Thomas Sorber is ideal because I don't think you would have to trade up for him. I think he'll be there at pick 18. And if he's there, hypothetically, if you're the Wizards and you take another guy at 18, do you trade back into the first round and go in for Thomas Sorber if you see him falling out of the top 20 and you really love that guy? So Will Dawkins, again, the resume shows that he's willing to be aggressive, and why not do it again for a guy that's from the hometown, the DMV?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we'll see how much the Wizards value a guy like Sorber, but I think he could be a really nice piece alongside Alex Sarr. Another thing that's interesting with his game is that he took three-pointers in almost every single game for Georgetown, but he was not a good three-point shooter at all. Shot about 16%, only made 6 on the whole season, so I'm not quite sure why he was shooting as much from outside the arc as he was at Georgetown last year, but I don't expect that to be part of his game whatsoever here at the next level. I think if you're getting him in DC, you want him as a rim protector and as a rebounder, and I think you'd hope that you could get the most out of him offensively or around the rim. I think Derik Queen obviously is a much more talented prospect and much more intriguing when it comes to being able to score the basketball and play around the rim. It's really just going to depend what Will Dawkins and the Wizards are going to value here in this draft out of a potential big man if they do get one. I expect the Wizards to get a big at some point in this draft, and also a guard or maybe a wing. Like I said, there are holes everywhere on this team.
And I was going to ask you, I brought up with Derik Queen, but the development of Sorber, do you think it'll take quite a while and more patience compared to a guy like DQ?
Probably offensively for sure. I kind of see him as a guy that, maybe down the road in his career, you get him to average a double-double with around 10 to 12 rebounds per game, which would be good for him. But, maybe just eclipsing averaging double figures as a guy offensively. I don't really see him being an elite-level offensive player by any means at the next level, but I am interested in what he can do defensively and rebounding the basketball.
Yeah, and I think he has the traits to be that type of center in today's NBA, and or whether forward or however you pair him up with Sar. But one thing for sure, Ben, you brought it up. I think the Wizards will take a big man in this draft. I think that's if there was any odds on that, you take the over of 0.5 big men that are going to be drafted to the Wizards this upcoming draft. You just need it. You need to breed competition. You have Tristan Vucevic, you have Alex Sar, Rashawn Holmes. I don't know. His future is kind of up in the air here in Washington. You need a big man. You need to breed competition because at the end of the day, in today's NBA, it's a lot about getting that guard, which I think the Wizards will get as well, or the stick with Jordan Poole. But you need a big man that can transcend your team to being a threat offensively and defensively. And you have that in Alex Sar, but if you have another guy like him, smaller, who can do what he does at the same pace, I mean, that's sweet, and that's what you need here in Washington.
What do you guys think? You think Thomas Sorber fits in well here in Washington because of his rebounding and his defense? How would that look alongside Alex Sar? But most importantly, let us know how you're feeling about Kon Knueppel and Derik Queen, because we are super, super high on the aspect of maybe Derik Queen staying home and playing for our Washington Wizards. Thank you, everyone.
I was going to say, Ben, I need to hear why Wizards fans are comparing Kon Knueppel to Corey Kispert. Outside of looks, I mean, there's no way. If you genuinely look at it, Corey Kispert's time at Gonzaga and Kon Knueppel's past year at Duke, you cannot say they're the best. They're the same player. To me, it's blasphemy. It just doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, let us know. Let us know in the comments. That'll do it for this week of Locked On Wizards. Next week is NBA Draft Week, and we couldn't be more excited to have you guys be a part of it with us. We'll be doing a live stream for it. We'll get the details out about that. But for now, this is it for Locked On Wizards alongside Abdullah Ayubi, my co-host. I'm Ben Strober, and we'll see you in the next one. Hail to the Wizards.